And what he's referring to is sometimes called deep reading. It's a euphemism for being fully absorbed, immersed in an author's work. A few years back, someone wrote an article, an essay. The hook, the title was, "Is Google Making Us Stupid?" Right? He's not really suggesting that Google is making us stupid, but he wants to catch the reader's attention, so that's the title he gave. Is Google making us stupid? And he's written an entire book about it, but part of it, in summary, is that he's saying, like going back to Marshall McLuhan's famous, the medium is the message. So much of the way the internet is arranged and the content distributed that it's altered the reading patterns and habits of people. And even people who were deep readers, meaning people who read a book a week or more, or regularly read full books, they noticed that by consuming information on the internet, it's become more or less, heading or title. We call a lead sentence, L-E-D-E, the lead, and a little paragraph, and then read more. So not a whole lot of people are clicking on read more. So they're just scanning headlines, mostly, then lead sentence, maybe paragraph, and then maybe read more. And not only that, we know that Facebook acquired Instagram, which we use now for our own promotion. And although they were asked, the guys who made it, like 4 or 5 guys, the company, they never grew the company, they kept it small. It was only like 2 years old or something. They asked for $2 billion. And Mark Zuckerberg said, I'll give you $1 million. They went, okay. That's okay with me. I'm okay with that. They didn't argue too much. They accepted the $1 billion. And people thought, is he foolish or he just has too much money to spend? What's the problem? Or what's the situation? And what he perceived, and perhaps not he alone, was that Instagram had the capacity, cross feedback, that Instagram had the capacity to cannibalize Facebook. Because as time has gone on, Facebook was like a picture and then some stuff, then it became mainly pictures, then almost only pictures, and Instagram just was pictures from the beginning. So you saw, and it's instant, it's immediate, take the pic, it's up on the net, you don't have to log in, or, post in the Facebook sense. So some people have made the case that everything is shifted toward visual media. And this is the point I would like to make in a roundabout way, is one of the famous axioms or maxims of writing is show, don't tell. Right? The good writers, they write things in such a way that you get the picture, so to speak. They don't tell you exactly what it is. They show what it is by, to get heady and intellectual, T.S. Eliot called the objective correlative, which means whatever the author has in mind, there's an objective correlative, meaning words, images, etc., that if they're assembled in a proper way, will convey that idea or concept to the person. That's the idea in summary form. But so what I'm going full circle to is those who fear that visual media will eclipse literary and all other forms of media. Well, the literary media to begin with was to give you an image, a concept, some vision. It's been said the artist project, and by that I just don't mean people who paint, but art as a whole, artists, writers, etc. It's been said to give people new eyes, new vision, new perspective, a new way of seeing. That's why in art they study all the intricacies of that, like contrapposto, the first time somebody had somebody, move their body a little. We saw those old Greek, Egyptian things and the Greek thing, and then somebody actually had somebody like move a little, contrapposto, contraposition, and other things. So they made a big deal out of it, right? In terms of, it was artists giving people a new way of seeing things, a new perspective. Well, interestingly to us, that's really what the spiritual project is. As Guru Maharaj said, what is your service? To acquire the proper angle of vision, right? Sambandha Gyan, etc. It's acquiring the proper angle of vision. Om Jnana Timirandasya is acquiring the proper angle of vision. So really the spiritual project is similar, but deeper. Dive deep into reality. If we take it that art at its best is some sort of representation of truth or reality, then concede that and say, yes, then we should dive deep into that reality, beyond the superficial aspects. So back to deep reading, that's why the writers of the novel, they would say, well, when in the novel form, you can totally immerse the reader in another world, and their life and circumstance will be, put almost in a state of temporary suspended animation, right? Where they'll be so absorbed in that. Even the gamers, what's the famous company? Rockstar? What's their famous program? Ends in a 5?
Grand Theft Auto?
Yes. Grand Theft Auto 5. They asked the guy, well, what are you going for here? He said, we wanted to get to the point where the person, the gamer, is the movie. Not that you're just first-person shooter where you're in it, you're in this movie. And we know there are movies like that too. Everyone could make a list now of what they've seen. But to give all of this some credence is what I mean to say. When, well, let's start with Sukadev Goswami, or let's leap to the, when you say, Parinistitopi Nayargunye Uttama Sloka Lilaya. He's saying, I wasn't watching any movies. Right? I'd never seen any movies. I was in the Nirguna plane. Remember, he was liberated in the womb of his mother, and also rather large, right? Not just a little baby, he was came out fully developed, liberated. So this is why he's the speaker of the Bhagavatam. He was never under the influence of the mundane. But still, Nirgun, I mean, he's on the outskirts of the Vaikuntha world. Nirguna, dive deep into reality. So what does he say? Uttama shloka lilaya grihita cheta rajar se akyanam yaraditavan. But then, the Uttama Sloka Lila, I heard the poetic descriptions of Krishna. That means divine imagery, Dibya Chaksu, divine vision, deeper vision was awakened. Because there's generic divine vision too. But deep, I like to quote Yeats, because he said, in the deep heart's core. And the Spanish word corazón, for heart, and core, I like that, because it's talking about the core, because say everything has gradation according to Guru Maharaj, so even the heart, the outskirts of the heart, going deeper, then the deep heart's core. So what does Sukadev say? When I heard these descriptions of Krishna, he was flooded with real-time divine imagery, right? Divine, not just images, but images of reality, reality images, live streaming reality images. And he said, which surrounded, enveloped my consciousness and carried me away to a domain that I didn't know existed previously. Okay. It also says in the inverse too, Narada, when he's introducing himself, how his story, how I came to Krishna consciousness by Narad Muni Prabhu. You know? So, without going into that story, at one point he says, now, when I sing the glories of Krishna, he says, the Lord appears on the lotus of my heart as if he was called for. Right? He likes to appear there. There are other slokas like that as well, and even paralleled in Guru Maharaj's birthday prayer to Saraswati Thakur. Gorima Guna Haribasana Bayanam. As he's singing the glories of Gorakishore Das Babaji, that Krishna is roped by the description and dwells in a tenth of consciousness, which is very beautiful. Vaikuntya Pritivyadi Sakala Chinmoy. Everything in the spiritual world is composed of consciousness. We're addicted to, because we live in the world of time and space, and measurement, we're always measuring things. This is that far from here, and Thailand is this far from India or Russia. We think like that. So we hear, oh, Ayodhya's here and Vaikunta's over there, and go. We can't think of it in terms of time and space. You need to think of it in terms of conscious development and dedicating conscious tendency. That's what, separates spiritual regions from one another, is a development of a conscious development of dedicating tendency, not some topographical, cartographic type representation of it, which an artist is likely to do if they make a painting. You know, put Goloka here and then the Vaikuntha world and then like that. But we're told, Chintamani's Charanabhushanam Mangananam. The whole Vaikuntha world is accommodated in an atom of Goloka. So you have to really change your thinking about that. It means to come under the influence of revealed truth, give way to the time, space, measurement consideration that we have of the limited world. If we're going to discuss the unlimited world, that needs to be suppressed. Therefore, it's called the adhokshaja realm. There are those who think by suppressing sense experience, you'll experience the higher. That can only take you to a generic neutral position. But when the higher plane comes down, then adhokshaja, automatically the lower experience is suppressed in the presence of that. So there's total immersion in that domain. And as an example, the conclusion of the Bhagavad Arka Marichimala, right? Bhaktivinoda Bhagavatam Puranarko Dunodataha. It's risen like the sun to give illumination, guidance, direction to those living in the darkness of ignorance of the Kali Yuga. 18,000 slokas. Here's a 1,000 sloka collection selected from the 18,000. So at the end of the book, Bhaktivinoda Thakur reveals how it is he came to compile the collection. And he says, I was in a dilemma that I don't want to say anything that sounds like self-promotion, pratishta, but at the same time I thought, if I don't give credit to my Gurudev, there's risk of offense. And then he explains, what does he say? Deep reading. One day in deep reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, saying, Swarup Damodar, the right-hand personal attendant, Mahaprabhu Dutiya Kalevar, Mahaprabhu II, appears to him. That alone is extraordinary. And were it not from the lips of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we would dismiss it out of hand. So Swarup Damodar appears to him and tells him to make this collection and some suggested criteria, and he gives a unique explanation of the first 3 slokas of the Bhagavatam, identifying them as the first is Sambandha Gyan, the second Abhideya Tattva, the third Prayojan Tattva. So here is an example of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's reading is so deep. It's not that one of the characters is appearing to him, but the inhabitants of the Supreme Reality. Guru Maharaj expressed it like this once. He said, if we take of it as a current or a stream, if you're standing on the bank of the Ganga and you toss a flower into the Ganga, it enters that current and it's carried away. So gradually it's going further away from you. Right? That means being situated in the realm of time and space and limitation. Saying, but if you run along the bank with the flower, it remains in view. So we can say that there's, like this is live stream, real-time live streaming Lila. That's what's in the Bhagavatam, that's what's in the Charitamritam. We sing it every day. Radha Krishna Lila Korilo Prakash. It's going on eternally. Right? But so for someone who has the capacity, they may enter the current of that stream in a real, lifetime, meaningful way. It's also the purpose of, part of the purpose of hearing the pastimes of Krishna. They're eternal and unlimited. So each time we approach them, if we approach with the proper serving mood, something new can come to us. And they're extremely visual. Right? The pastimes of Krishna, they're filled with all sorts of visualizations. Krishna, his devotees, the Vrindavan environment, conveyed also is the mood of the servitors. So the great acharyas, they have the capacity to appreciate these things with the greatest depth. I've mentioned the prayer of the Queen, Rukmini, Shrutvan Gunan Bhuvana Sundara Srinvatam Te, Nirvisha Karna Vivaraya Haratonga Tapam, Rupam Disham Dishimatam Akilartalabam, Twayachuta Vishati Chitram Apatrapam Me. This prayer is loaded with Siddhanta, beginning with her saying, Shrutva Gunan, hearing your qualities, Bhuvana Sundar, I can understand you're the most beautiful thing in the world, as a matter of speaking. We understand, and beyond. But she's saying, by hearing your qualities, this came to me. Rupam Drisham Drishimitam Akilartalabam. And so we say, Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila, from sound, form appears. Not that form will give enhanced sound. I'll chant the holy name of Krishna before the picture. No. Serving the holy name properly under the guidance of Guru and Vaishnav, the proper conception of the form of Krishna will appear. So she's saying, hearing about your qualities, now you're the most beautiful thing in the world. Nothing compares to you. And along with that, I understand, Srinvatamte, I understand now why there is such a thing as hearing. Right? We can get a biological, scientific, explanation of, why hearing evolved. Here, she's saying very beautifully, hearing about you. Now I understand why there's the gift of hearing. It's to hear about you, your qualities. Rupam dusham dushimatam akalatalabam. Seeing you, I can understand what the purpose of vision is, of eyes, of seeing, the sense of seeing. Right? We crave beauty, beautiful sights. Right? All the senses, beautiful sights, sounds, smells, taste, touch, etc. The heart, through the medium of the body, mind, intelligence, is expressing its innate hankering for such things. It points to the actual nature of the soul as a seeing, feeling, tasting, smelling being. Right? And all those things, they're not just meant for temporal gratification, but they're constants. We're constantly seeking out sources of sense experience. It's natural, but become artificial. In that, in one place, Prabhupada describes it as our natural love of Krishna is perverted as a lust for matter. So we're thinking by seeing the persons, places, things of this world that our vision will be satisfied. Right? And it's not. Actually, and Oscar Wilde joked in one place about the best forms of pleasure are those which do not satisfy, because then there's more hankering. So what do we find? Here, in mundane pleasure, the people become satisfied, so to speak, and then the reaction appears in the form of suffering. Whereas in the spirit, we can say in the parallel in the spiritual world is, the devotees, their eyes are sometimes compared to bees drinking the honey of the lotus face of the Lord. And although they may do that incessantly, they're not satisfied. They have more hankering to see Krishna. They don't say, like the Indian man said to me, I told Prabhupada when he asked about my Indian preaching, and the Indian man said, we'd come in and say, oh, I know what is Krishna. And Prabhupada said, that is their disease. Jnane janantu eva janantu kim bahutya chame prabho manaso vapacho vapasu vacho. Anyway, Vaibhavam Tavagotra, like that. Vaibhavam Tavagotra, same thing. Beyond the grasp of the mind and the intellect. This is important. Atak Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhavyed Grahyam Indriye. At the same time, we're saying the name, form, qualities, pastimes of Krishna are beyond the grasp of the mind and intellect. The senses. Beyond what can be seen, heard, tasted, touched, smelled, etc., or conceived of in the mind or intellectually. So then what are we doing? What is the Krishna Conscious Project? We just said the whole talk up to this point was about this possibility. Now we're saying it's not possible with your senses, your mind, and your intellect. Well, what Sukadev said, Nairgunye, beyond this realm, what I saw was not a mundane form, a mundane person, mundane relationship. That's why every part of the Bhagavatam is significant. He was certified earlier. Remember, he's a 16-year-old boy, naked, right, wandering. Then he goes past a pond where women are bathing naked. How would the average modern 16-year-old boy respond to that? Let's not go there. Right? Sukadev Goswami, they saw nothing, not even trace elements of exploiting tendency in his vision. This is significant. So he's already been certified. He has no interest in mundane female form or mundane sexuality. Then what does he hear about? The erotic pastimes of Krishna and the Brajagopis. And that captures him wholesale. So then what does it tell us? There's erotic potential in unalloyed devotion. Madan Mohan, Freud, Eros is driving the world. The erotic principle is driving, making the planet spin. Right? And Madan, Cupid. So Sambandha Gyan, Sambandha Tattva deity, Madan, Mohan, we're all bewildered by Cupid. Krishna is so beautiful, Cupid becomes bewildered. And also it means that the bewildering influence of Cupid can be broken by becoming redirected towards Madan Mohan Krishna. Krishna with erotic potential. That's what it means. Right? So it's very visual, very sensual, right? The spiritual project. But requires a deeper level of seeing, acquiring the proper angle of vision. So in these descriptions, they're not ordinary descriptions. That's why whenever we repeat them, we should try to do so with greatest accuracy. Or if Krishna's pastimes are being told to children, they should be accurate. We shouldn't make things up. They should accurately follow the story. Because here's a child offering themselves to hear these things, they need to get it right so that when they'll get the maximum benefit for it because they're perfectly constructed. And in the future, when they recall hearing these things in their childhood, they may have a tendency to reproduce them accurately. So, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur placing emphasis on the pastimes of Krishna, the childhood pastimes of Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam, and the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, in one sense, the whole idea is total immersion. And we have a glimpse of that when we hear from the higher devotees. And interestingly, even the same pastimes can be described accurately by great devotees, but still have a different taste and quality to the rendering. As we find in the beginning of the Brihad Bhagavatamritam, Maharaj Janamejoy is speaking with Jaimini Rishi, and he says, and he just finished a Mahabharata recitation. And Janamejoy said, I heard this previously from Vishampayana Rishi. This story, the Mahabharata, divine story. He's saying, but essentially you've told the same things, but the way you've told it, it has a particular madhura, sweetness quality to it. And your recitation has awakened in me a desire for more of this madhura sweetness. And it's in response to that that Jaimini Rishi begins telling the Brihad Bhagavatamritam. So it shows it's not merely the transfer of information or story. Oh, I heard that story. Right? But how it is told, the way Vrindavan Thakur is telling some pastimes, and similar pastimes being told by Kaviraj Goswami, out of fear of committing the Marjada Bhyatikram, impertinently surpassing predecessor. Kaviraj Goswami would say, what Vrindavan Das is described, it would be an opera to describe the same thing, but if there's some aspect that was not described, I'll describe that. He says that humbly, but we know from Srila Guru Maharaj, Vrindavan Das Thakur, and we worship Chaitanya Bhagavat, is from the perspective of a cowherd boy, Sakya Rasa. Chaitanya Charitamritam is an exclusively Madhura Rasa literature. Just like in my first actual meeting with Srila Guru Maharaj, where Krishna Das Babaji Maharaj took myself and Bhakti Abai Narayan Maharaj up to the lotus feet of Guru Maharaj. At one point, Bhakti Abai Narayan Maharaj said to him, he said, I find I'm more attracted to Chaitanya Charitamritam than Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, like a bold statement. But Guru Maharaj just responded very matter-of-factly, saying, of course. He said, because Srimad Bhagavatam presents rasa, it takes us from the plane of ontology to rasa, but in gradual development, culminating in Madhura rasa in the 10th canto. And whereas Chaitanya Charitamritam is an exclusively Madhura rasa literature. So now, naturally, that is your preference. And I was saying, it is? You know? So, and my own personal experience with having a brush with this was in Holland, accompanying Srila Gurudev, where we were staying, a little bit out in the country, there were these cows, like as high as the ceiling here, these giant, beautiful white cows, and horses, huge like that. And these horses would come over to the fence, and there was like electric fence. You know, if you touch it. You know. But I found sugar cubes where we were staying. So I would bring sugar cubes and just sort of like crush them in my palm and then stick my hand out, and the horses would come over and like. I don't advise this because they're not accurate in their bite. So sometimes they're like biting my hand, and they're going mad after the sugar cubes. So, but I got to see them up close, and they look like really extraordinary horses. Remind us of the, like you know, in thoroughbred horse racing, they say, interestingly, that all the true thoroughbreds have descended from 4 horses. If you trace their lineage back. So we could fantasize and say, oh, you mean like Krishna's? So there are extraordinary thoroughbred horses. Anyway, somehow in this environment, Gurudev started talking about Mahabharata. And he told the story of Abhimanyu, the death of Abhimanyu. It's a very heartbreaking, moving story. But the way he told this story, it's Mahabharata, soldiers, battlefield, there's no women there. But it had this Madhura quality of sweetness to it. So when the Madhura Rasa Bhakta tells the death of Abhimanyu, as Gurudev did, still it has the Madhura Rasa taste. That's the point I want to make. So, Amnaya Prahatatvam, these descriptions are divinely descended from the upper world. So we have to revere not only their content, but their structure, many things, and offer ourselves in service to them. It's all about service. As Guru Guru Maharaj quotes Professor Senyal revealing to him early on in the days of Gaudiya Math. If I go to read the Bhagavatam under the guidance of Guru and Vaishnav, on their order, it may be devotion. He said, if I go on my own, it may be karma, it may be vikarma. Same story, same words, everything's there. One's a devotional act, another one could be karma or vikarma, even detrimental. What is activating the spiritual current is the order of the Vaishnava in pursuance of the order of the Vaishnava, pursuit of the order, serving the order of the Vaishnava. If ado arpita paschad kriyeta, beginning, middle, and end, if really this is being done as an offering, and one is offering oneself in service, as Kaviraj Goswami says, Sanatana Goswami says, it is not I who am writing Chaitanya Charitamrita, but some divine power is descended and is moving my hand and making me write or express these things. It is Madan Mohan's work. He's speaking like that. What did Saraswati Thakur say about Bhakti Vinod Viraha Dasakam? Bhakti Vinod Thakur has written this through him. It's that perfect. It's as if Bhakti Vinod Thakur has written this through him, through his pen. That's for writing, but it's also for perceiving, receiving, all of these things. Not that I will now employ the Stanislavski method, I'll get the book out, I'll pretend, I'll act in such a way as to, like virtual reality, have an artificial simulated experience of higher reality. That will be my play. My Rupa Goswami warns of two groups of people, the sentimental by nature, who cry easily. Everyone knows somebody like that. I mean, we may be someone like that. But can just start crying over some very relatively non-emotional things, or what should not really evoke such extreme. Therefore, there are words like maudlin or syrupy. I mean, there are different ways to describe this. So he says, so that person who cries over kittens and puppies and many other things, they'll cry when they hear about Krishna too. Don't think that those tears are some sort of ecstatic emotion. He's warning. Why is he warning if it's not an issue, even in his own day? You know. When I remember we had heard so much from Prabhupada about sahajiyas, you know, and Mayavadi, like we were in India, like looking around, like, there's one over there, don't look, you know. But so we're traveling around preaching, and we're at some lady's house, and she's going to show us her deity, and she's going, I am very angry at Gopal today. Today he is being a very bad boy, and he's not eating, you know. Like, and I'm thinking, is this real? I mean, I hope it's not real, because if it is, I offended some. But it just seemed like too much. Is it really like that, ma'am? Like the Russian ladies. What did they, it's okay, now I'm not here to offend, you know, the babushka Brinda. But what is that thing where they say, like, affectionate names for Krishna and Radha? Krishnichka, and you know, he knows, little sahaja, but he knows. No, but some of it's okay, but you can go too far. A little sahajiyism goes a long way. So, I've seen before deities in the Radha Damodar temple do all kinds of strange, and then start talking to the deity, arguing with, you know. Rupa Goswami is warning about this kind of stuff. Those who are sentimental by nature, and the other group, acting, Stanislavski method. Getting into character. So don't mistake it for something like that. Right? We're going to read and pretend. It's, again, although it appears to be, it's not. It's not a mental exercise. It's not an intellectual exercise. It has to be a faith-based transaction. Whether you're an intellectual or a simple-hearted person, it has to be a faith-based transaction. Shraddhan Bato Nushunayadata Varnayedyak. Then something substantial can come to one. Not by force, not by sentiment, not by imitation, but through service. Sevan mukhe hijivaro. Shayam eva sportira. Shayam means here, through service, he may consent to reveal himself. Tasyaisha atma vivrinute tenalabhyas. Tanum shwam. He may decide, he may not. As I told before, and what you excerpted, Vishwanath saying, you're taking Krishna Nam, he's not revealing himself. Why? He could, but he knows you're capable of better. So it has to be real. Still, Nachta Praya Shabadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Uttamasloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. At a certain point, what do you call it? The tipping point. Then right close to 100%, tipping point. Reaches so much of a majority, tipping point. But that's up to Krishna. But that said, I will say, it's my firm belief that everyone who's ever substantially been in connection with Krishna consciousness has some level of revelation. Something's been revealed to them, and not only once, repeatedly. And we know that, not in a sense of self-assertion, pratishta, arrogance, but out of gratitude to our Guru Varga. We cannot deny that something has been gifted to us. Something has touched us. Right? That's why, and the philosophical basis for this is Kaviraj Goswami, self-deprecation, but extreme glorification of the gift of the Guru Varga. Jagai madhai hoite muise papishta, purisharakito hoite muise lagishta. I'm lower than the worm in the stool, more sinful than Jagai and Madai. Right. If you hear my name, you'll lose all your good qualities. If you chant my name, you'll fall down. But what I'm telling here, what's passing through me here in the form of Chaitanya Charitamritam, there's nothing higher than this. That he says with, after the confessional self-deprecation, says with absolute certainty, assuredness, there's nothing higher than this. So that's the basis for a realistic position for a devotee to progress in Krishna consciousness. The right amount of self-deprecation and acquired appreciation gifted by the Guru Varga for genuine spiritual substance. That's a viable, progressive spiritual life. And they can have some hope, some prospect. When Guru Maharaj says, dive deep in the reality, that it's possible. It's not imploring us to do something that's not possible. But he's saying, but to do that, you have to be serious, utsahan, nischayat, daryat, tat, karma, pavartanat, etc. Serious, determined, faithful, patient. And as much as Krishna wants to reciprocate your heart's inner, true, earnest hankering, that'll be reciprocated and more. Guru Maharaj said, whatever little faith we have, cast it toward the infinite. He said, and then prepare yourself for what will come in return, in response to that. When Mahaprabhu serves the prasadam, he's so generous, he gives enough for 4. Prepare for that. He only knows to reciprocate infinitely. A drop of the infinite is infinite. So when we have any, by the grace of Guru and Vaishnav, Sadhu Shastra, some touch with Krishna consciousness, we feel ourselves very fortunate, as fallen as we are. Some devotees told Guru Maharaj once, they said, after all of these years, taking the holy name, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, he said, my enthusiasm, hankering for reading the Bhagavatam, it's gone down, this person said. And Guru Maharaj said, well then stop reading the Bhagavatam. He said, no, I don't want to do that. And Guru Maharaj said, oh, then you do have some appreciation. Just not as great as you might imagine or hope for. But in that Bhagavatam, we also hear about hunger. And Guru Maharaj is saying hunger is symptomatic of health. Dharmak svanushtitak pungsang bishvak sena katasuya not pariyed yadiritim shrama eva kevalam. A way to measure whether or not we're properly adjusted. Saying whatever it is you're doing, if the end result is increased attraction for hearing, chanting, remembering, and serving, then you're going in the right direction. If whatever you're doing, it's going in the opposite direction, it's time for readjustment. Kamasya nendriya priti labo jiveta yavata jivasya tattva jigyasa nartoyasteha karmabhi. Same thing. Life should be structured in such a way as to minimize one's involvement with the mundane, or arrange the mundane in such a way that it's a launching pad or catalyst for your spiritual culture. Structure your life, arrange things in such a way as you can engage in the maximum amount of spiritual culture. Remember, the fruit sellers, the Vipra Patnis, the Yagya Patnis, the wives of the Brahmins who were engaged in sacrifice, who denied lunch for Krishna and Balaram. They're told how their wives had not met Krishna, part of their eternal pastimes. This is, imagine, their first glimpse of Krishna, personally. But what are we told? They heard of him, and out of the sound comes the form, this beautiful Krishna from who? Fruit sellers in Vrindavan. The ladies, the people would come by selling fruits, would tell them what was going on just down the road. About Putana, all the different pastimes of Krishna. They're telling them. I mean, we're telling them in one sense, again, limited time, space, etc., history, as though they happened so long ago. But even from that perspective, imagine if it happened 3 days ago, with what excitement someone might be telling, or if it happened this morning and it's the afternoon, and the gossip is spreading like wildfire. So as young girls, they're hearing about Krishna from authentic sources. So it's complete with guna, rupa guna lila, nama rupa guna lila. So they have a deep Krishna conception in their hearts. So when the right moment comes and they're approached by the cowherd boys to satisfy the hunger of Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys, they're running in response to that, bringing everything they have to offer. And what do they see in the clearing in the Vrindavan forest? Shamam hiranya paridambana balya barha dhatu prabala nadaveshamanavritankshe vinyastam astamitrena dunanam abjam karnot utpalaka kapola mukhabjahasam. Krishna's smiling, waiting for them, leaning on a cowherd boy, or Balaram twisting 1,000-petaled lotus. And he's turning the lotus, and their hearts are turning. They're becoming dizzy with Madhura Rasa sentiments. Lila Pravesha. They've entered into the pastimes. On account of conscious development of dedicating tendency. That's what qualifies one to enter that plane. So if Bhaktivinoda Thakur is here, where is he? His body we could GPS. But where his heart is, that's another thing. We have some indication of that in his writings, the songs, etc. Gurudev said, attracted by the wealth of the melted heart of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Saraswati Thakur descended in this world to distribute that Krishna consciousness movement. Hare Krishna.